I've been in business for 24 years. I should have known that it wasn't going to go the way that I expected, you know. I have some boys that want to be like entrepreneurs now, and they'll come up with an idea and they're like trying to map the whole thing out from the start, you know, and I'll be like, no, 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 don't do that because where you think you're going to start and where you end up, I guarantee you're going to be two entirely different places.
Well, very excited for the podcast today. We have Cory Black on. Welcome, Cory.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, Cory is the owner, founder of Cory Black Design. I mean, you mentioned that Lacey may have something to say about owner, but we know how that goes.
Yep, absolutely. We'll call her the CEO.
well,
She's,
I'm
go ahead.
no, I was going to say I got to give you credit. I mean, one thing we'll get into at some point, Cory, is bringing Lacey on and the amount of work she does and coordination. I mean, your communication level is definitely one of the best. Like, it's pretty impressive.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's always nice to hear. It's not easy to do in this industry, you know?
Yeah, and I'm sure early on, I mean, we go back quite a long time, which we're going to touch on all this, Cory. But I mean, over the years, it's been fun to see your growth. I mean, we're going to talk about now incorporating interior design as well as architecture.
Yeah.
But one thing I've noticed is how quick you are to respond with updates and protocol. And, you and Lacey definitely have figured that aspect out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a work in progress over the years, but we have worked very hard at that recently, especially.
Do you find, let me start here, Cory, because I know your background's a little unique in the sense
Mhm.
that I can't think of any architects that I know, designers, drafts, people, any of them that were framers. And I believe you were a framer, right?
Yeah,
Early on in your career.
I was. Yeah. Yeah, I started framing when I was 16
So
and did it for about 7 years.
how do you feel that that played a role in, just design and how that contributes to, the buildable set of plans that we have to use as a contractor?
Oh, it's huge, right? Honestly, like I would say that like, or I have said in the past, design is like, you know, 90% schematic and 10% inspiration, right? Or maybe it's 10% inspiration and 90% schematic. So, you can be inspired by an idea, or a client can have an idea about something that they want to do, and you can get that on paper, but it's another thing altogether to get it to work. And so where that really has benefited us over the years, I've found, is that if someone's asking us, can we do this? I'm able to start almost instantly mapping that out in my mind. Like, okay, yeah, I could do something similar to that because I could do it this way, like seeing the structure in your mind and, and how that relates to the design itself, and then being able to translate that into real life is a huge game changer, especially when you're talking about homes where, at this level, clients have a lot of different ideas and a lot of different requests, right? Like it's not pick floor plan A, B, or C and elevation option one or two. It's completely custom and individual and unique to that client. And more over the years, the complexity of what clients have or are asking for has increased. So it's been extremely beneficial, and in fact really like a big huge part of what's made us successful, in the sense that you've been able to create all these, one of a kind, custom, unique homes with all these different features and options, is being able to navigate that ahead of time, being able to see that and understand how it can be, uh, designed so that it can be constructed in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see a lot of technology through BIM modeling and stuff, to kind of maybe work through duct work
Yeah.
and trusses and, how those overlays. But, that personal experience also plays a huge role, as you mentioned, just having that framing background, knowing what it's like to have the bags on, as opposed to design and how those two
Yeah.
correlate.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and then it's across the board. It's not just determining how to create some feature or function of the floor plan, but it's also being able to, create elevations or design roof systems in a way that reflect what the client wants. Like, we've had projects over the years where the client has come in and said, I love this floor plan and this elevation. And in a very simple way of speaking, the floor plan doesn't match the elevation. So what becomes a challenge then as the designer is to be able to take and manipulate the roof design and the massing of the house and the structural components to bring those two together, and create that cohesive outcome between what the client wants in the floor plan and what they want on the outside of the house.
You bring up roof design and massing, and I think to the end user client, I think a lot of us may look at what we deem as good architecture, maybe a house that really appeals to us for whatever reason, maybe we've seen on social media. Um, how does that, as you look at that, how difficult is it to, balance, the roof design, the massing, and how does that play a role in the overall architecture of the home?
Yeah. Um, uh, how to answer that? It's
Yeah.
critical. Years ago when I first started, even though I had experience framing and like in the years that I did it, we were still conventionally framing some roofs. We were down in the dirt cutting rafters, from dimensions that were called out from up in the, up on top of the roof. And that's a kind of like a lost art now. And at the same time, like where everything today is mostly trusses, that can be a little bit restricting at times too, right? Like you're confined to the parameters of what a truss can do. And even in that, like over the years, what truss designers are willing to do or what they can do or what they've figured out from an engineering perspective has changed. I did a project a year ago that's under construction now, where the complexity of all of the different, ceiling heights and roof lines and pitches and vaults on the second floor, uh, you know, they all sort of conflicted with each other. And so we were designing trusses that, we weren't really even sure would work. But you had to design that truss to know how to design that elevation. So you're creating elevations and building sections at the exact same time. And you're trying to create this layout that a truss designer can take and then turn into a real life, application, a structural application. And in that case, like, honestly, like we sort of submitted the plans holding our breath, like I think this can work. And sure enough, it did, and the end result of that then is you did all of this work to create a very specific interior and a very specific exterior. And really, without having those skills or the understanding of how that stuff works, you have to turn that over to somebody else that didn't have anything to do with the actual design, and what might they compromise because of what they don't understand you know and so over the years it's taken a lot to figure that out. Like honestly, when I first started in the business, I didn't understand any of that. And so I'll go back to projects I did 20 years ago and look at the elevations and the level of design, and their what's the right word, their grade school level, compared to what we're doing now. But because I didn't understand that, but I was being challenged, to design these types of homes, I had found like a truss designer that I was basically paying by the piece to work after hours, creating those roof layouts, and structural designs. And he couldn't always get what I wanted, but he could get me started, and then I could take it over and, change it and manipulate it, or ask him to come back in after hours and help me change it and manipulate it. And I did that literally for the first 10 or 12 years of my career, until I had just finally examined enough with him, or had done enough of all the different, pieces or components of roof and structural design that I now could do it myself. And even from then, it evolves today to where, like, what we could create 12 years ago with that basic understanding, it's exponentially greater now what we can do and what we can navigate. So then it's, again, going back to, it's a combination of all these things that a client wants inside of the house. Like, these houses we build could have, a 6,000 square foot single level house could have 5 or 6 different ceiling heights,
Right.
or vaults or treatments in it. And what's always been challenging for me is how do I spend all that time with that client asking all those questions and designing for all of those specific elements, take and turn that over to an engineer whose brain is not tuned the same way, frankly, that I want to say mine is, or that a designer's is. We're trying to weld the creative to the practical, where engineers are mostly just practical. And so how do I take and turn that over to an engineer and expect him to figure all that out the way that I want it? So for us, being able to perform for our clients at the level that they ask us to, or being able to design, these types of homes that we're doing, a critical component is doing the structural design ourselves. So we're taking what we've discussed with the client, that creative, all those creative decisions, and we're applying the practical to it, and then we're sending that to an engineer and having that engineer justify the design through, you know, gravity and lateral analysis and structural calculations and the things that we can't necessarily do ourselves. But by the time it comes back from that engineer, we've designed it, we've checked it, he's gone over it. We'll take and do the input and create our finished, product. So it's gone through this system of like three different checks and balances. And the end result of that, hopefully, is that the drawings that go to, that get into your hands, that everything works. And that's no small feat, right? Yeah. But the critical component there is that a mistake can mean that the client doesn't get the vaulted ceiling that they wanted in their family
Mhm.
room, and that could be you know that could be a huge problem, right? So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, as I think about it, Corey, I mean, the reason I asked that question is because as we work with clients, setting the expectation of what it looks like to get through that design pre-construction process, it's pretty straightforward to some extent as you kind of bubble out the house and you figure out, the size of home and how many bedrooms and the layout, creating a floor plan. We don't want to say it's basic or 101, but I mean, there's an
yeah,
elementary level to, okay, I have a lot of experience. I know flow. You don't want too many hallways, depending how the client's going to operate and live in the home, that's one thing. But as you make that vertical, to your point, I mean, you're dealing with now one, the architectural side of the home. If it's modern or traditional, you
yeah,
have height limits
yeah,
based on the city or HOA. And then to your point, you could have a 26-foot great room. You could have 14-foot
yeah,
in maybe the master, and then 10-foot in the kitchen. And so you're working through these different parameters and trying to figure out the interior beams and columns, spot footings, as well as vertical, figuring out the roof massing and what that looks
yeah,
like from a truss design. It becomes incredibly complex to make that now 2D to become 3D.
yeah. It does, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. Like, having that background and framing means that I can see in my mind while I'm creating that design how that's going to project vertically. And then from there, the challenge is like cementing the detail, because like even in that regard, the amount of detail that we provide today, 24 years into our career versus again, say 20 years ago, is exponentially higher. And that's multi-tiered, right? Like the cities require more, the HOAs require more, like the whole game has changed. You rewind 10 years ago or 14 years ago in the East Valley, and plan sets were 5 pages long, right? Or like maybe 10. To today, we just finished a plan set that was 56 or 58 sheets long, because of the number of levels in the house and the amount of detail and the complexity of all of that, and then add to that like all the additional things that cities now require and ask for. It's as simple as like again, go back 10 years, you rarely even got a soils report,
Hmm.
like I honestly remember working with you, a while ago, being one of the first builders to ask me if we had one. Like, you were kind of ahead of that game, going like understanding your own liability, you know, in relationship to that, to where now like it's a minimum requirement in any city, and the first thing that we do on every project, order a soils report, you know,
Right.
and then it all goes from there. So you're collaborating or correlating from like this project that we just finished, where we're we're going from 24 feet below grade
Yep.
to 30 feet above grade, you know, and making sense out of every level in between. And then a client comes to you with some oddball request like, hey, can I do steel plating in the around the closet and the ceiling in my den, you know?
Yeah.
And you're going, okay, sure. So now I've got to figure out like that closet happens to be over the basement. So now I've got 6,000 pounds of steel plating that's going to sit on top of floor trusses. So that's not going to work. I got to add some beams to support the shell or the structure of that. And then how am I going to get lighting in there? How am I going to fur out the walls? How am I going to get mechanical? How am I going to, what's the rough opening of the vault door? Like that one little 10 by 8 room in that house has this, dramatic list of complexities that you have to work your way back through. And, even at that, like you're kind of going, where do I stop?
Hmm.
Because, like, too, one of the most difficult pieces of the puzzle is managing client expectations. The client
Hmm.
doesn't really understand the complexity of that request, especially when they've seen it done or they've seen a project that you've done. It has all of those things. To them, it's like, hey, we'll design the floor plans, and a few weeks later, we'll submit to the city.
Hmm.
But the reality of it is, like, there's an imbalance in the amount of time that you spend in creative versus we'll call it technical, like the construction document. You'll spend almost more time in creative, but from a workflow perspective, that's maybe 20% of the work,
Hmm.
or 30% of the work. And the 70% is all making sense out of all that and creating all that detail and applying it into a point that we can give it to you, and you can go give that client an accurate estimate based on everything that they asked for. One missing component in that plans could equal a pretty substantial change order. So again, the game's changed. You know, it's
Well,
different today.
yeah, it is much different. And I mean, credit to you, Corey. It's funny because as you mentioned, I mean, we've been working together for a long time. I mean, 8 years probably. And the depth and scale and detail you have now in your plans are phenomenal. I mean, it's amazing. Just like all of us, like in my business, I'm looking every day how we could be better. You're doing the same thing. I mean, you've completely scaled your business in a lot of ways. But to your point, what's
Yeah,
really difficult is like, yes, you have consultants, you have engineers that are working, maybe staying current with the codes. What's unique about Arizona is the codes change by city,
yeah,
municipality. That's
yeah,
not the case throughout the US. And so if you're building in Chandler, or Gilbert, or Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, I
yeah.
mean, it's all different code, you
Yep,
know. So you
yep,
have to stay current on all that. And to your point, setting
yeah.
expectation with clients, you may have a client that wants a really tall ceiling in the great room, but you don't want to come in after the fact and have soffits everywhere. And so you're trying to figure out, whether it's fire sprinklers you're putting in to,
Yep.
insulation requirements by the city based on the current code to all the substrates you put on the exterior. I mean, all these things take space and room and height, and you have to plan accordingly.
You're absolutely right. And then add to that like height restrictions and lot
Hmm.
coverage and setbacks and easements and HOA requirements and standards, and then like you say, every city is different. So you know, a submittal in Gilbert is a walk in the park compared to a submittal in Phoenix. You know,
Hmm.
it's a whole different set of applications and requirements. So it's really difficult. And then they change that all the time. Like it's a moving target. I know when Lacey came in the office and started working with me, she was used to a corporate background where everything was about schedules and to-do lists, and it was very systemized. And as much as you try to systemize, say, like the submittal process, it's very difficult to do because again, every city requires something different. And so I remember her being like really frustrated that she couldn't figure that out. And she said, I'm just trying to do it right. and not make any mistakes. I said, the problem with that is like just trying to figure out is the best you're going to do because it's going to
Mhm.
change. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's a huge process.
Well, to your point too, not only is it going to change, but for example, I think septic's a good example. I mean, not every subdivision that you and I work on is has tie into sewer, right? And
Yeah,
so when you're putting in a
yeah,
septic, some municipalities are like, "That's fine. Let's get." You may have it, um, the design laid out where you believe the septic tank is going to go in the leach field and so forth. But the problem is, some municipalities are like, "No, Corey, if you want a permit, you have to have the septic approved, the whole design."
right,
And
right.
so that can, if you're not aware of that, then it's maybe on a county island or something, that can hold the permitting process, 8, 12, 16 weeks
Yep,
based on not knowing when that septic has to be designed and implemented, either, pre-permit or post-permit.
yep. You're absolutely right. And for some cities, they just move the target on you. Like in Gilbert now, if you want to build a guest house that's over 1,000 square feet of floor area, you have to get a special use permit. And that was kind of the new thing last year. And it's not like they've got a mailing list or an email list that where you sign up and they'll tell you all these updates. So 6 months ago you did a casita or a guest house or a pool house for somebody in Gilbert, no problem. 6 months later you submit and, oh no, you can't do that. you know it's a moving target in that respect, and it's a lot to keep up with. you know yeah.
It makes it, yeah, it makes our job. It's not dull by any means. What do you figure?
No.
Yeah, you have such a diverse portfolio, Corey. You've been able to work on some incredible projects. Do you feel there's a architectural style that's more difficult to design or meet that client expectations?
Yeah. um not really, but like I'm sure that there is. The reason I say that is because I think I enjoy that part of the process the most. Like that's elevating the project. Like that's the first time you're really bringing it out of the ground into life. And so honestly, like roof design and elevation design is like my favorite part of the process. And I think because I'm very challenged by that, right? Like you were saying earlier, like if it's a European style home or say a modern style home, you've got to be thinking about what you want your elevation to look like from day one, like as soon as you start designing that floor plan, because the elements of the floor plan are going to be very different, for different styles of elevations. And so you're sort of like working preemptively on the floor plans to create this vision in your head. And then when we get to the elevation phase, we get to sit down and actually bring that to life. And so like I'm very challenged by that, but like in a really good way, like it's very exciting to me to do that. So no, like bring us a different style, challenge us to do something that we haven't done before. For years, like we were kind of known as the French country guys.
Mhm.
We were one of the first ones to like spearhead that style here in the valley. It was back in 2003. One of the first projects that I ever worked on was for a good friend of mine that was a builder, and he wanted to do something like nobody had ever seen before. So like we got on a plane and flew to Utah and went through the parade of homes for the first time and looked at all these what do people call like Utah style homes, which were
Mhm.
predominantly like that French country style. And so we came back and we sat down and we designed this house with a steep pitch roof. Bear in mind it was like a 712, which nobody had ever done. and and he wanted to do it all brick, and thin brick wasn't even a thing back then, and you couldn't find any brick in Arizona that wasn't just red. So like he had to source brick from North Carolina and have it shipped here, and so we had to do details to set real brick around the perimeter of a house.
Hmm.
And then he wanted a black tile roof, and you couldn't get black concrete tile. It didn't exist. So we actually like bought all of the leftover, different colors from the same cast, and there was like style of roof,
Mhm.
and put this like mulatto roof on the house. The HOA flipped out. Like the first day it started going up, they called him. He's like, hold on, be patient. We had found a
A painter.
trade, yeah, a painter
Yeah.
in Phoenix that painted old faded concrete roofs
Yeah.
and came and painted it black. And honestly, like to this day, the roof still looks terrific, but nobody had ever seen that in in Arizona. Like I would say at least the black tile roof. And fast forward today, that's like what everybody wants, right?
Right.
And you can get black concrete tile, or there's multiple, options and choices. But back then that was like cutting edge, and that was sort of like what created my career, if you will, here in the East Valley. All of a sudden, we started getting requests for similar styles and homes, and this fresh vernacular. We were known for years as kind of like, if you want French country, Corey's the guy to go to. But then we sort of got like locked into only doing those
Hmm.
styles of homes, and so then as things evolved and changed. Uh, it was very refreshing to have someone come and say, "Could you design a farmhouse for us?" And now at the same time, like the modern farmhouse vernacular, you know, like that got a little overdone too. And and it got to where I was like, okay, how do I make this one look different than the last one? I want to be original and unique and give the client what they're after, but like, how do I make this look a little different? And then again today, like fast forward now, like it's varied right across the board. And it's a lot more fun, and also people are like being more true to architectural styles. So if someone says, I want a European style home, like they actually want to be authentic or more authentic in that architecture, and come home to that experience. If I want a Santa Barbara or a Spanish colonial, or a European, a traditional, French country, the architecture now is like more distinct and more definitive, or more true to what the that original architecture was and it used to be. And that's been a lot of fun, you know. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's what sets you apart, Corey, in my opinion, is I've been able to see not only all the different styles you and I have worked on together, but with so many builders. I mean, your portfolio is so unique. And, from a creativity standpoint, especially being a framer in a past life and now you're into architecture, that inspiration, because you've done so many unique styles, where do you peel from that inspiration to come up with some of these incredible creations?
Like Pinterest, really is fantastic. Yeah. I remember somebody asked me one time, like, if I just go home and look at Pinterest all night. I was like, oh no, no, like I do that all day,
Yeah.
But Pinterest is kind of a blessing and a curse, like it's really great to be able to go and resource inspiration images for clients, because clients in general aren't as visual as we are. If I tell someone, hey, let's do a monolithic fireplace in your at the front of your house to kind of offset or balance the elevation, that guy's like, well, what do you mean? I don't know what that is. And you can go to Pinterest and you can find some different examples, and you can kind of steer the ship in that direction. And you're not trying to just copy something off of Pinterest. You're also going to take this concept and figure out how to make it my own, and employ some cool things to it. And over the years, like that's gotten easier, because the number of projects that we've done that have had original applications or designs, or have been more unique than the last thing that we did, have kind of given us the credibility to have clients like trust us with some of that creation and some of that vision. Even though clients are coming to you like to create this, you know, dream home of theirs, it's still difficult for them to sort of like trust the process and trust your creative ability. So Pinterest helps a ton with that. And then, like, at this point now, really just like past projects. So it's easy now. I mean, 20 years ago, you went and snapped a few pictures of a finished home, to fast forward to the day you're hiring professional photographers, to and photographers to like go and look at the home and document the process and the progress on them and things like that. And so our own archive has built to the point that you can use, past projects as inspiration
Hmm.
for projects now. So we sort of draw it from those areas. And then, like, just from your own mind, like I said, or
Hmm.
like we've touched on, being able to understand how to make a concept real. You can dream a little more in that space. you know you can say, I might try this on this one, like how would that work? Or I'm designing an elevation, I might I'm not totally happy with that roof line. What if I do this? Or what if I move this wall? Or what if I line up these walls and it corrects, cleans up my cord line, Like a lot of like testing and back and forth, and just really working to dial stuff in, you know. Uh, yeah, like that.
So as you mix in, the experience you've had, this database of existing projects, the creativity that's natural to you, Pinterest. I mean, you mentioned, you'll have clients come in with requests and they may bring in certain styles. And, often a lot of interior designers are like, they're bringing in style A and B and they're not even the same, right? But what is it that
Yeah,
they like
yeah,
about that? How are
yeah,
you trying to interpret, that request from the client to make sure that you're designing something that they're requesting, knowing full well as an architect that these may be two completely different styles?
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of the like it was getting that's the blessing and the curse of Pinterest, right? Um, you know, to mention a name like Jamie Rose, I remember like she would always say, "Don't puke Pinterest all over your house." Like she would say that to the client, and that's people can go and they can get all these different ideas and bring all these things in, and like you say, like you have to try and make sense out of that. So that kind of goes back to like I want this elevation with this floor plan. And you're like, no, 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 those don't work. Like I need to do it this way and I need to move this over here and mask this like this if you're truly committed to that, to that style and to that elevation. And so
And if I interrupt you real quick, I think you made a point
sure.
there that we were touched on. You said, I want this floor plan with that elevation. And that's just something that any novice person doesn't understand. In some cases, you can't do.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So then it's well, look, I could do this and that's similar, and we actually like from a floor plan and elevation perspective. uh, we like to sort of like have the clients in for more meetings than typical. So like say like, we'll have a pre-design meeting with a client and get all of their notes and all their bullet points and create an outline. And then we'll have them come back 2 weeks later and we've designed the center of the home. We've done entryway, dining, living, family room, kitchen, prep, whatever they want sort of in that area. And we look at just that, before we move on to the other sides. Like the opposing view is someone's going to give me all of their information and all of their wants, and I'm going to take, 30 days or 3 weeks or whatever, and I'm just going to kick out a whole floor plan. You know, a lot of times what you run into there is like the client didn't consider the width of the lot, or they didn't consider the depth of the lot and how that's going to impact the design, or they didn't consider, I wanted this bedroom and this bathroom, and they don't play well together, So we're looking at it like in a more diluted fashion, step by step, and say, okay, what do you think about this? And let's talk about what's happening in this area. And now we can kind of forecast from here where we're going to go with the bedroom wing. And oh, by the way, like, look, I got this mapped out, and I'm running out of room on the lot width, so I'm going to have to do this or change this or um, go in this different direction. And so we're making the process like involving the clients more in the decision making through the process, and then the ultimate outcome there too, like is that the client has had a chance to sort of consider each space uh, in a more focused way, versus like if I give a client a whole floor plan and they're looking at the kitchen and dining room and family room, but they were so overwhelmed by decisions in that space that they kind of neglected the primary, bath or the primary bedroom, or some component of that family room or that kitchen design impacts everything else that I did, right? And now I have to redo every section of the house to fix that one area. So we're trying to kind of manage it from that perspective. And then, in those meetings, bringing in concepts from the get-go. So like this was the idea I had for your prep kitchen window, or you had this idea for your dining room window. Here's how it applies, or I couldn't quite do it this way, but I could do it this way. Or here's the idea that you had for your island, and from that perspective too, now, like even adding, like we're doing full furniture layouts, during the design process, like how does a person know? that their family room is as big as they want it to be. How do they envision that space if they don't see the furniture inside of it? And a lot of the times, like if we have an interior designer involved from the get-go, then we're just able to pull them in, and kind of collaborate and do that together, which is really like sort of the antithesis or the inspiration behind like bringing interior design in-house. If I have a question about a floor plan, or what size they want the island, or what size they want the kitchen sink, so that I can make sure that the island is big enough, I just walk across the hall, uh, versus sending an email or making a phone call and hoping to get an answer or a reply. you know
So
you're
you
able to
kind
sort
of,
of
yeah, you kind of
go ahead.
soft landed that, because I think what's unique is, which we spoke about early on to give you the introduction, is as an architecture firm, you're also offering interior design, and although there is some crossover and similarities, it's a totally different business model, right? And so, where did that,
Yes.
why did that come into play? And, you mentioned how it's benefited you in a lot of ways, but maybe the practical side of running that operation as well.
Yeah. So, not at all what I expected. But at the same time, I tell myself, like I've been in business for 24 years. I should have known that it wasn't going to go the way that I expected. In fact, I have some boys that want to be like entrepreneurs now, and they'll come up with an idea, and they're like trying to map the whole thing out from the start, and I'll be like, no, 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 don't do that, because
Yeah.
where you think you're going to start and where you end up, I guarantee are going to be two entirely different places.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the way it was for me with design. You know I, I actually got into design just accidentally. I was trying to be a contractor, in my early 20s. And, long story short, I was grossly undercapitalized, and by the time I got a house finished and sold, uh, or got a house finished, I had spent all my profit trying to live, because I could only
Hmm.
do a certain number at a time. And so I was just looking for like work on the side. And I had mentioned to my designer at the time that I'd always been interested in architecture, and he perked up and said, well, I could use some help. And, one thing led to another. And here we are 24 years later. Like, it's not the path that I thought that I was going to be on. And so it's the same thing with interior design. Like, we added it, whatever, like 2 years ago, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. It'll take a year or whatever, but we'll get it rolling. And the reality of it is like the length of time it takes to develop some of these projects. Like, I was wrong from the get go, right? Like, and then you know getting the projects to the point that you can also start pulling content, right? Like, we've hired an
Hmm.
interior designer that's extremely capable, but comes from some larger firms in Scottsdale, and has a high level of ethics, in the sense that she's not going to take work she did for those designers and show it to clients now, and say this was my work. Like, ethically, that doesn't fit, right? And we don't want to do anything that doesn't fit that way. So we're having to ask clients to trust us now, through the process, and then design the home, do the architecture, do the interior, and then get to the point of construction where you can start to pull that content and show, the quality of your work, and justify that, right? Like, justify now someone having the experience, uh, because they love what they saw that we did, instead of, well, Corey's got a good name, we trust him, let's go with him. And
Hmm.
and that's worked, but the reality of it is, in that area, it's only going to get us so far. We have to get to the point of having that content, and as it is now, fast forward, like I said, 2 years later, we're still trying to accomplish that. It's coming, but it's taken a lot in terms of, financial commitment, and time. And we had to get a bigger office, which was a great step for us anyway. We were able to take a space and remodel it and upgrade it and make it our own, and it's very unique to us and looks great and presents well. And we have room for finishes and samples, and we have an island that we can lay them out on and do client presentations. Like, but all of that costs money. And then there's also like, okay, now we need to be able to perform at a higher level. Like there's more tasks, there's more to do. So now we also need more people. So like just payroll alone becomes, uh,
Hmm.
a forever winding road, you know? Yeah. And, we're not in a business where we get paid every single day. That's the reality of it, you
It's
know?
in phases.
So, yeah, in phases. So, we have to be really careful with our budgeting. Like the game's changed there too, 2 or 3 years ago, you know, I didn't have all that overhead, I didn't have all those expenses. I didn't have that vision for the company. It's been an evolution, and really like I was only able to have the vision or because of like the good people that we found to come and work with us and to support us. You realize, well, man, with that draftsman or that assistant or that office admin, I can do more. Like that was one of the biggest things for me. For years, like designers in the East Valley were just it was just one guy trying to make his way. And I mean, we didn't get paid that much, so it was difficult to do anything greater than that. And so it was really difficult to keep up and stay ahead and fill all those requests. Like every job that we hand off to you creates a certain number of uh, requests, right? Like,
Hmm.
for what you guys need, and hey, there's a change. They're going to do a recent project. They're going to do a pressure regulator and reduce the size of the gas line going into the house. But then that creates this like ripple effect where we have to
Right.
redesign the gas isometric and and then add regulators to like every appliance in the house and resubmit that to the city, and get that reviewed so that you guys can keep going, and you know every project that we do creates 50 to 100 requests like that. And so, as one guy, how would you ever possibly keep up with that? And so I brought Lacey in, like with that background in administration and in corporate management. Like instantly I was able to 5x what I could do, and the whole thing from there started to change. And I can do more work, and not only that, but I want to do it better now, like I can see that I can. So, then you add a part-time assistant, and then you decide to get into interior design,
Hmm.
and so, and then you add a guy that can duplicate what I do, at least on some level, not necessarily like, the floor plan and elevation design, but like all the back end stuff. He can handle that. And, now we're facing like we need to add someone else in interior design, or we're not going to keep up, this year. So it's just constantly evolving and always changing, and you're just trying to take each problem as it comes. Like you have no idea what you're going to get asked for by 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you have this idea in your head of what you're going to get done, and then you run into a client in the parking lot. Like that was this morning. I've got a client that has an office upstairs, and and oh, I want to get my house started. I got to come talk to you about some changes. And so now you're in this 2-hour conversation when like my whole ambition this morning was just to finish up some floor plan changes. And so there's that, like the workload and the balance of that, along with you know how the company is growing and changing. But what I would say there too, and take a minute, like to give credit to our team and how great they are, and that's taken time, as I'm sure like that's a process of I don't know what you want to call it. That's an evolution to get the right people. But the team that we have in here now is fantastic to where I can trust them with a lot of that stuff. Like I don't, a request might come into me for something like that gas line, but it goes right from my email box, my inbox to Wesley's,
Hmm.
and I don't touch it again. Um, and there's no way that we could function on this level, or that we could provide you with like those prompt responses if we didn't have some system like that in place. And so, like, entrepreneurs over the years, or especially guys in the design business, and even me, I was guilty of it, would say, well, like, I just can't find anybody to do what I do. It takes too much time to train them. But like, that's like the hard way out, is the reality of it. Like on the other side of having taken the time to train people, to find good people, to figure out how to manage payroll and all the systems around that. like you realize that that's kind of the easy way out, or the hard way out. I'm sorry. The easy way out really is just to put the time into finding the right people and developing the systems that keep them, you know, engaged and functioning efficiently on your behalf. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was going to ask you about that evergreen, right? I mean, these projects are evergreen in a way that, throughout design and construction. And you mentioned that, RFIs come in and changes from clients and so forth. Um, at this point in your career, as you look back, Corey, from when you started now, and you mentioned a couple times, even speaking with your sons about that entrepreneurship journey, the value of systems and operation and protocol. I'd imagine now you're a lot more refined as far as you have a game plan when these RFIs come in. How has that accelerated growth or freed up time or, the ability you have for more time for your clients?
Yeah, well, I would say it affects both. Like it's the time that the time that I have for the clients, like that's improved. And then the time that I have for myself has changed dramatically too. Like I couldn't take a week vacation 10 years ago. Like, or if I did, I was on my phone putting out fires and apologizing the whole time. And now, like, it's like it's still hard. Like the business is seems like it's in this perpetual growth phase, and I don't know that that's really ever going to change. But I can go out of town. I can go spend time. I just went to Orlando with the kids, and my mom, and got everybody together for a week. And when the request came in, I could just forward them. Hey Wes, could you take care of this? Hey Ben, could you work on this for me? Hey Ben, could you print this and send it? Like you're never fully I'm never like completely detached, but I'm able to manage. And that's really what you want. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, like one of the most difficult pieces of the business is like managing client expectations,
Hmm.
or and so how do you do that effectively if you're just one guy? Or like a lot of the time for you, like when you have to make that request, you've hit a wall. Like maybe you didn't see it coming, and your team needs to make that request to keep this thing rolling, or to get an answer to a question that has the potential to affect the project in a dramatic way if it's not interpreted correctly. So uh you know say I'm in a meeting, or say I've got a full boat of meetings, like how do I help you with that quickly if I don't have someone I can pass it off to, you know? So it's instrumental in both respects.
That's amazing. What are you most proud of?
Um, I would say just uh, how much I've learned, like how I've evolved, um, like where we've come in the last 5 or 6 years, I would say. Um, and again, like I go back to projects that I did early in my career, and I look at those plan documents, and then I go and I look at something I did today. Like I'm really proud of where we've come, or how we've been able to grow and evolve. I mean, when you're starting in this business, the learning curves are like on multiple fronts. You not only do you got to learn how to use CAD, you got to learn how to design, you got to learn how to do structural design, you got to do all this stuff. Like that's like the first 10 or 15 years. And like once you sort of learn those things, get over those humps, like now you can really start to dial in and focus on the creative part of it. And so like how that's evolved, and what we're creating today, like the projects that we're turning out today, like literally, in the last month and in the next month, the projects that we're turning out are like the pinnacle of anything that we've ever done. And we're only able to do that because of how much we've learned and how much we've evolved. And then, applying that like to the business side of it. I mean, I would honestly, like, I wish I'd had someone, or I had been, you know, focused enough to find like sort of like a mentor sooner that could have helped me figure those things out. Cause, I kind of just did by accident. Like, well, Lacey's tired of the corporate world. Like, why don't you just come work for me for 4 hours a day, to like now she's like pushing me to come in here on the weekend, you know. I got a lot to do. I got to catch up on this. I got to catch up on that. Like like her handling the dynamics of the business. Like our accountant died 2 months ago, and
Mm,
like that turns your whole world upside down. And if I didn't have her to navigate that, and
mhm,
find a new accountant and get everything back on track. I mean, we had a not a lapse in payroll, but for a couple of cycles, we had to cut our own checks,
mhm.
like putting all those systems back together. I don't know how we ever have a chance of keeping up or like performing for our clients at the level that they want us to. So just how much we've evolved, like how much more creative. I should say I am. Like I hesitate to say like it's the whole team, but how much more creative I am, and then you know how great the team is. That's what I'm the most proud of.
I
Yeah,
love that. It's funny
yeah.
how, I mean, you alluded to this. I mean, when you start your company, Corey, I'm sure you look now and you like don't realize how obsessed you are about business and systems and protocol. Like now, businesses, as you mentioned, I wish I had a mentor, but now you can be a mentor to others because you understand the business so well, having run it for 24 years.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting, like my perspective of what business was going to be versus what I like know about it now. Right? It's entirely different, and like I say, like my sons or people that are wanting to maybe be entrepreneurs or start their own business. Like the first piece of advice is like, hey, like the mistakes are what get you there. Like don't you create this idea in your head of what it's going to be like and what it's going to look like, and the reality of it is like it's nothing like that. And it takes time, and it takes mistakes, and it takes growth, and it takes like not being so stuck in one frame of mind, uh, you know to create a business, to grow a business, or I should say like turn something into a business, because I don't know for the first 10 years that I really even had a business. I was just playing
Just
playing in
operating.
design. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, like that's the advice I get now is like don't worry so much about it. Like it's the proverbial, if I could tell my younger self, be like, hey, don't worry so much about it at all. You're on the right track, you're on the right path. Like you don't know what you don't know. You've got to go out there and discover it. And
It's funny how you say you don't know what you don't know and you have to discover it. Cause I always think back, I remember in college taking an accounting class and trying to memorize like retained earnings, like what are retained earnings, right? As you're figuring out how to read the balance sheet. And now, running a business, very clearly know retained earnings are, right. And it's like
yeah.
these terms that like you probably didn't understand at the time, but now running a business, I mean, it's just ingrained and it's just you're living it and breathing it, right? So,
Yeah.
as we close here, what keeps you up at night?
Um, you know, uh, teenage daughters? No, actually, I've got really great kids. What keeps me up at night? Just, what I need to do tomorrow. Honestly, like, even anymore, it might just be like, dreaming about floor plans, like, I might leave here at 6 o'clock, and I couldn't figure out how to make that, bunk room work on a project. And so like I'm like, okay, like I've learned that over the years too. I used to just try to stay and figure it out, and you get so tired and so worn out that you couldn't be creative. You just kind of detach from that and step away and go home and dream about it a little bit, and then come
Mhm.
back in the morning and, oh yep, just do this, and it all works out. So I would say just that, like um yeah, I don't know, productivity.
Yeah,
How
productivity.
to yeah, how to stay ahead of everything. And then the big challenge is, we're not designing. No two homes is the same. No two homes are the same. They're all different. And you're always giving, like, somebody wants you to, hey, I've decided I want to eliminate the dedicated theater. I want to do a bigger game room theater downstairs. but it blows the whole lower level apart, so I've got to go back in and redesign all that. Hey, look, I'll try to get this for you later this week. But later that week you're still struggling to try and figure out how to tie all these components back together. And that's the stressful part of it. Like, again, you can give an estimate, like, I think on this 14,000 square foot house, or this 12,000 or even 6,000 square foot house, I think it's going to take me this long to redesign your kitchen. But it's a moving target, right? Like, to get you what you want, I may have to change something else more dramatic. And so that's what haunts you or keeps you up, is just trying to stay ahead of all those requests and keep that ball moving, keep that thing rolling and get those projects done. you know just takes so much time
So what do you do
to
for
be done
fun?
at that level. Ah, yeah. Recently I got into riding dirt bikes with my boys. So that's currently the thing. Yeah, I if you'd have said that I would get into dirt bikes when I turned 50, I probably
Yeah,
would have.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you should be hanging it up, Cory.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. In fact, like, they used to, like, I was into the dunes for a long time, and there we used to say, with age comes the cage, and
Yeah.
now I'm out of the dunes. I sold everything, and I've got no cage, and I'm having the time of my life. But it's been a really good chance to, like, just spend more time, with my boys. One of,
Mhm.
like, you're riding together, you're not like a boy on a quad and I'm in a sandal out in front, like, you're side by side on the trail. And instead of, like, just going to the dunes, we're going to the mountains, and we got a trip to Colorado planned this summer to go right up to the, those high peaks, and see things we've never seen. Like, it's interesting. I was so focused on that one thing for so long that it just sort of stopped being profound.
Mhm.
And so I made this huge shift, and it's been great, a ton of fun. So that and anything outdoors, I got Lacey, like, a big quad, like a and she like, one of the only wives that's always down to go, and
That's
always wants to
awesome.
be included. So she trails along behind. We got her some, like, little handlebar streamers for a quad, and a bicycle bell, and she's got an ice chest strapped to it. She carries the sandwiches and drinks, and we went out New Year's Day and did Box Canyon, and
Fun.
she trails along behind, and I just kind of look back, and when I kind of can't see her, I'll just stop and or go a little slower until she catches up. But she has a great time, and so that's kind of been like the biggest thing for our family over the years, like how we bond the most is just kind of being together outdoors, doing different things like that. And so that's what we do for fun.
Well, that's amazing, Cory. Well, I can't thank you enough for the friendship and the professionalism and all you do for us in the design community and making time today. So, for those listening, where can they find you?
You can probably just most easily find us on Instagram at Cory Design, CoryDesign, or CoryBlackDesign.com. Um, you can find emails and phone numbers there. Phones contacts generally go to Lacey first, and she does a little, I don't want to call it screening, but a little interactive
Mhm.
questioning, or correlation ahead of time. But those are great resources. I mean, today, like back then, you were trying to get a website. Today, like, Instagram is like your whole online presence. So that's a great place to find us and see what we're doing, see recent projects, see what's happening in the office, and meet the team in various ways. So
Well, thanks again, Cory. Appreciate you.
thank you for your time. Appreciate the opportunity.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.